We are already online. Our social networks. Yeah, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Fine.
Fine, is
We
it?
were very happy that you visit us. It was such a sad thing that you have to leave so early.
Yep. I'm hoping like things are getting easier on your end and things are settling down a little bit. Yeah, gracias por tu invitación. Es para mí un honor. And, I'm sorry I can't. I left a bit early.
It's fine. Also, for example, here were a lot of expectation for your presentation because file design is a file that it's very popular here in Mexico. Is something that we have a lot of questions because the Mexican colleges researchers of design told us, hey, but the design by concept is focused on the user.
Yeah.
So what's the difference? The classical concept of design and the user experience design.
Yep.
So
And
that's one of the questions they.
yeah, I will answer the questions today, and I'll come back. I'll come back when things are less tragic for you guys over there, and I'll spend some time with you and meet the people.
Yep. So well, the first question: what's the difference on the concept between the classical concept of design that is focuses on the usability for the objects and the user experience design?
Sure. So there's not between these two. There's not a lot of differences, but there's a difference between just considering design from an engineering standpoint and considering design from a user experience standpoint. When you're considering design from engineering standpoint, you just consider what is going to be the easiest for you when you design an object or a website, what's going to be cheaper, what's going to be faster for engineers to put together and to make it work. If you consider the user experience, you're not going to consider these things first. You're going to first consider how people are going to use the object, the website, the game. What are their expectations? What are their perception of the product? What are they going to remember from it? What emotions we're going to get from it? So you can actually reach your goals to offer the experience you want to offer. And sometimes that means you're going to have to make trade-offs in terms of engineering on the engineering part. And sometimes it's going to be harder for you to make such a product for it to be to have a better user experience. But if you do that, then more people are going to be able to actually use the product. It's going to be more usable, which means there's going to be less frustrations and people are going to be able to understand what to do with it better. And also it's going to offer more emotions, like positive emotions, and it's going to be more engaging for people. So if you're designing a game, you want people to be engaged in the game, because otherwise, well, your game was going to more likely fail. So considering all these questions is like an investment for the future of a product. So you can actually have a better chance of succeeding with that product. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question?
Okay. And that's something interesting because here in Mexico, a lot of studios told me, the problem is that I need security in order to launch a game or an app, because I don't know if it is going to work. So, for example, for these indie game developers, what could be a good recommendation about how to make an experience test?
Yeah.
Things that they have to check.
Yeah, so we're talking about video games, right? You're cutting up a little bit. So I'm
Sorry.
assuming, yeah, I'm assuming you're just talking of the specific case of video games. Um, I know that it sounds for smaller companies and smaller indie developers, it sounds a bit scary to think about UX because you're not Ubisoft or you're not Electronic Arts or you're not Epic Games. So it might sound a bit difficult to organize, play tests and to have UX designers or specialists like myself to make an assessment of the game. However, without all these big labs and stuff, you can still look at what's like during the development of your game. You can always make some assessment of your game. So first of all, what you need is to know a little bit about the brain and how people are perceiving interfaces. What are the limitations of attention, of memory. You need to know a little bit about these things. And if you know that, you're going to avoid some common mistakes. For example, at the very beginning of an experience for a game, if you try to convey too much information to the player, it's going to be too much for players to attend to. So, like it's what we call multitasking, and we're not good at that. And they're very likely not going to remember that. So if you avoid giving too much information at the beginning, like lots of text explaining what to do, this is usually not a good practice. So there's stuff, like what I'm explaining in my talks, the stuff that's in my book. It's basic knowledge about the brain that you can use to prevent some of these common mistakes. Then the second thing you need to do is to test your game. And that part is a little bit, more complicated to organize, but you don't have to do a very complicated thing to do that. What you need to do is to invite a few people who are in your target audience. So if you're making a game like Dark Souls, you're going to invite people who play these type of games. If you make a game like Candy Crush, you invite people who play these type of games. You invite them and you don't tell them nothing about your game. And you put them in front of your game and you just watch what they're doing. So that's not, you need to know basic information about how to run these tests, but just by observing how people play the game and, what the things they don't understand, if they don't understand their goals, if they don't necessarily understand the messages that are on screen, if they're not doing the things that you expect them to do, it's telling you that your design is missing something or is not clear, that you need to rework on your design. And so to do that is just like watching them, observing them without intervening. And also you can ask questions through a questionnaire. So you can use, there's a lot of questionnaires that you can use for free. There's, for example, SurveyMonkey. There's a free version. You can use that. You prepare questions, and you can take, for example, a screenshot of your interface, and you just do circles, and in your head you can circle this element and you call it A, and then you circle another element, you call it B, etc. And then you just show that to the people after they played a little bit, and you ask them, what do you think A does, or what do you think B does? And just by letting them answer the questions without trying to intervene, it's going to give you a good idea of the things that are clear and the things that needs a little bit of rework. And if you do that, I guarantee you that you're going to find problems early on that if you do that, you're going to have time to fix before you actually launch the game, and find out problems too late when it's very costly to make any changes. So the sooner you do that, even if that's in a prototype mode, even sometimes if it's just a paper prototype just for your HUD or your icons, it's always going to be easier for you to make changes then rather than later.
In fact, we make the interfaces sooner on the game development here in Mexico. we prepare the interfaces and we check it. But that's a good advice because we did never ask for people. We used to do it in our groups. And for example, other thing that is very interesting and is a question that they ask me for you, it's about kind of games, for example, horror games that you need frustration.
Yep.
Because you want to replicate the experience of a horror movie, for example.
Yes.
In this case, if that's something that you have to do, this, how do you measure and where to put the frustration to make it the part of the narrative, the experience of the user, but not a fail on our game?
Yes. So that's a great question. That's a question that a lot of people are asking. So there's a difference between the frustration that is not by design, that you need to avoid, and the frustration that is by design if you are creating a game that you want that sort of emotions, like Dark Souls or a game about an horror game. You want people to jump or to be sometimes in a panic mode. So what you want to do is if you want to measure what's going on, it's a bit hard because this is more subjective, but you can ask questions. The most important thing is to define beforehand what is going to be important for your game and when. If your game is scripted, you're gonna anticipate your game at a certain moment to be more tense, for example. And when that moment happens, you can you can measure stuff like you can put a thing on their finger to measure the sweat, but that's a bit costly. It's called the GSR, galvanic skin response, so you can actually see if there's an emotional spike at that moment. Not everybody can do that. It's expensive to do that. What you can do is, watch how people react. Are they, tense in their seat while they're playing at that specific moment? And you can also, again, when you give them a survey, you can check if it's you can ask them questions about how did you feel that moment, and see if and verify if they had the tension that you wanted. Now, what you want to avoid is players being frustrated with something that is not by design. So it's really important to split the two. And I often give the example of Resident Evil. If you observe players playing Resident Evil and they open like a closet, and there's a zombie jumping up the closet, and you see players trying to back out from the closet, but there's a table right behind them left by a level designer, and they're in panic mode and they're trying to go around and they get hurt and something like that. So if this is by design, as a user researcher, for example, you might say, well, leave the table here because it created that tension and that panic mode that we want. Now, if you're doing a different sort of game when you don't want that, this is when you have a different answer. But that's the reason why it's really important when you create your game to always define what experience you want to offer and who is the target audience you're targeting before doing any sort of research and assessing the user experience, because it's never going to be the same depending on what your goals are.
Okay, let me check the next question. That's a good one, because there's other field that we have a lot of here in Mexico. Where do you make research about the user experience on disabled people, and is there any change of in the methodology of the user experience research when you're working, for example, with disabled people who cannot see some kind of colors, or I forget the name.
Colorblind? Colorblind?
Yeah, colorblind. Colorblind. Yeah.
So we don't do enough yet, in my opinion. But it's starting to gain a little bit more attention, so that's good. So when you design your user experience, the part of the user should be everybody who wants to play your game, no matter what are their capabilities for playing. If they're in your target audience, they should be able to play. So knowing that, there's a few things that you need to anticipate in your game to make sure that it's what we call accessible to everybody. So first of all, you need to make sure that your controller can always be remapped on all on all platforms. Remapping on PC and remapping on all consoles, and even on phone, it's always very important. So players with disabilities that are motor can actually change the configuration and make sure they can play. So that's one. It's not necessarily easy to do all the time, but if you can do that, it's going to make a lot of change for a lot of people. Then make sure that there's always a lot of contrast in your interface, because people with a site that is not as good as most people, if the contrast is not good on the interface, it's going to be harder for them to see the difference and see what is interactive and see the signs and feedback on the screen. Then you need to always have sound and visual to convey information. It cannot just be visual, it has to be sound. It cannot be just sound, it has also to be visual. Because if you have a player that's deaf or a player that doesn't have a good eyesight or is blind, then there's always another channel where they can actually have the information. So that's also something you need to think about, and that's a good UX for everybody. And the last thing is, I mean, the basic thing we have to think of, I would say, is also for colorblind people. It's about 10% of the population has some form of color blindness, so we need to take that into account. So for example, you never only convey information through colors. It always have to be colors and shape. You can also offer a colorblind mode sometimes, and there's, like in some engines, like the Unreal Engine offers a colorblind filter mode, so you can actually see with your interface, you can test it with a different color blindness to see if there's enough contrast between the colors. So these are the things that we can do. Not everybody is doing that. I mean, even like us in our games, there's still a lot of effort we still have to do. But now there's more awareness about that, and I'm happy about it. It's moving a little bit. You're right, we should invite people with different disabilities to play our games to see how they react. We don't do that very often. We often have players who are colorblind. The thing is, when we invite people to play our games, we only look at age range and what games they're playing. Usually we don't care about if they're male or female, and we don't ask them, do you have any disabilities? So it happens sometimes that we have a player with a disability, but it's very rare. But I agree, we should have playtest sessions with different disabilities, so we can actually see how people react and if they can play our games. Now, once the game is live, we also look at the community, like communities like able gamers. Like I have a t-shirt, like my mic is going out, but I have, that's an able gamer t-shirt. And so we listen to what they have to say, and what we did good and what we screwed up, and we try to change it. But it's usually a good practice, because designing for everybody is gonna improve the user experience for everyone anyway. So it's a good thing to do, but unfortunately we still have a lot of things to improve, unfortunately. Step by step, we're getting there.
Sure. In fact, Stu, Chris, a lot of people are sharing the videos, your conference on GDC and his streaming. So they are very excited about your presentation on the board. Um,
Well, thank you.
yeah, in fact, there's a lot of times that we have to check games from the developers. We also help them on that way, and we noticed that frustrated when they had to check their games with us because, for example, some of us have a little colorblind.
Hmm.
So we told them, hey, you know, I can't see your game, and it's true, no, I really cannot see it.
Yeah.
Uh, they get like very frustrated because they don't know how to make the game
Yeah.
or to fix it in order to make it more universal for the studios or
Yep.
for the users. Um, yes. Um, these questions. Okay.
So just for you know, I mean, it's something that is really dear to my heart because my father is colorblind. And when I was a kid, and even sometimes today, when we play some games, like board games or sometimes video games, like I chat with my dad, is like, but I can't see the difference between these two things. So this is something that I always was mindful of. And my mom has dyslexia. So it's also, I'm trying to be mindful of, you know, the amount of text that is written there because some people cannot read as well as myself, for example. So it's also important to reduce the text to a maximum and always have uh, intelligible icons to help people understand, you know, what does what.
Yep. Um, there's also another thing that it's interesting, and they are asking. For example, they experience on edu games, serious games, thinking because a lot of studios make educational games,
Mm-hmm.
but they care about you know, the legibility, the usability of the games. They are asking if it is important the game design to make it fun. It's because they used to make those educational games on templates for other games and just add the information for the game, you know. So recommend for them to make those games
Yeah.
more fun. In
So gamification and playful learning and educational games, it's very complicated to do, actually. I started my career with making educational games, and unfortunately, a lot of games are either not really educational. It's not because, you know, you put letters on numbers that you kids are actually really truly learning something, or and they're not truly a game or they're not truly fun. Um, so it's not because you pretend to be a game or you put a layer or something that's fun that it's going to be engaging for the kids and the kids are going to have fun playing with it. So this is a true problem that we have with educational games. People are starting to understand better what it means, but I mean, it's been a few decades that we're trying to think about that, and there's a scientist that who passed away last year called Seymour Papert that was really a pioneer in using computers to teach children. And he's back in the 70s and 80s, he developed at MIT a language, the Logo programming language. And he
yeah,
used that. So the kids, instead of thinking, oh, how can I use the computer to teach children, he thought about how can I enable kids to teach the computer to do something they care about. So this is how we developed a language. So kids could actually program the computer to draw what they wanted to draw or to create poems or something like that. And by doing that, kids had to, they would learn geometry, for example, because by teaching the computer to draw a house, you need to draw, for example, a square and then a triangle. And so you have to understand the properties of a square to do that. So through meaningful play, where something they were really truly engaged with, they would learn something through it. And this is usually the best learning experience. You're learning by doing when you do something that is truly meaningful. And the other problem is you need to have transfer of learning, because it's not because you're going to learn something within a game that you're going to be able to transfer the things that you've learned onto a new situation or onto the real life. So these are a lot of challenges that educational games need to overcome, and it's really complicated. So the game has to have a good UX, means it has to be usable and has to be engaging. Because if it's not engaging, the kids are not going to be really truly motivated to play the game. And if you're not motivated, you actually don't learn as well. So that's the thing. And then you need to have transfer of learning. So that makes it very, very complicated. But the best games are the ones that are actually really, truly meaningful. And I'm not trying to teach, like to give instructions to the kids, but more empowering the kids to make things they truly care about. And through that, learning about mathematical properties, about language properties, and stuff like that. I can't really answer that question in 5 minutes. It's very complex. But
I know. And that's a good point. I think the point of not giving instructions, but instead empowering the kids. They were asking because of the presentation of GDC, that example of the tutorials from Far Cry, and tutorial of Far Cry that is very ironic, the tutorial.
Yeah,
they are asking.
It's actually pretty funny.
Yeah.
It's a funny tutorial, and they do that on purpose. But if you do something like that, where you just like learn, they do, like you put a lot of text and you ask people to try to remember that, and it's not in context and you don't really have any meaning for it, well, you're not going to learn it as well. And it's frustrating, and it feels that you're being taught, and it feels like a tutorial that we don't like. And on the other hand, you put the player in a situation where they have to solve a problem because it's meaningful to them. They have to get protected before the zombies arrive, or they see a chest and they're interested into getting what's in the chest, but they can't reach the chest. They need to do something to get it. And if you place the player in a meaningful situation, and then help them and guide them smartly into getting there, then you have the most meaningful learning, because it's learning by doing. But of course, it's longer to do that. And so you need to do that for the things that are most important in your game. And if in case of educational games, of course, because you can't, it takes more time to design, it's level design. So you have to level design the onboarding, and not just think about that later on. Say, oh my God, how are we going to teach all that to the players, and then just like list the things they have to do. And this is when it's frustrating and not fun, and people actually don't remember how to do it.
And that's what they used to think, that it's very difficult to make the tutorials more interactive. Well, it's something that we have to do it in order to be like in the best, to make the best games for the people.
Yep.
Well, I have there are the questions, the main questions. The others are like derivations from those questions. And so if they want to contact you, to ask you, to invite you to some other events in Latam, where do they can find you? Where do they can find you?
Find me? Usually the easiest way is either contacting me on Twitter or LinkedIn, because it's separated from my work email, and I have like tons of emails at work. But every now and then I would look at Twitter or LinkedIn, and it's easier for me to organize things from there. And I answer to everybody. Sometimes I take sometimes it takes me a little while to answer, but I always answer. So really don't hesitate to ask me questions. I'll be more than happy to answer and take some time. And also students, I know there's a lot of students out there or who want to get into the game industry, and I always try to take some time, and take 30 minutes to have a Google Hangout with the students to answer the questions. It's important for me to help them out. So sometimes it takes me a little while to get there, but I always answer. So don't hesitate.
So, la buscan en Twitter o en LinkedIn, y en Twitter está como @Celia Hodent,
Sí.
con H, sin J. Entonces,
es muy fácil.
Sí. Speaks in Mexico, when we speak the names that sounds like with H, the H is mute letter, so it's like a lot of time if we just say the Twitter, they write it with a, and it's like, it didn't work. No, man, it's because in English it's with A. But yeah. Visit, and thanks so much for your streaming.
Well, muchas gracias.
We hope you, there, and we'll check how about making a new trip to Mexico, something I don't know, with a beach, because I really need a vacations.
Yep.
Yep.
And I hope with all my heart that everything is gonna be okay in Mexico. And I saw like firsthand what was happening and people helping each other out. So and again, thank you everybody. Like I was being taken care of very well, even though you guys had other stuff to attend to. So I'm really thankful and grateful for that. And yeah, Fuerza Mexico, and I'm hoping the best for you. With todo mi corazón.
Yeah, and for us too, everybody here, Benjamin, Alex, Chris, Sharon, I send you all our love to you, and we're very glad that you're fine, and we hope we have another chance soon.
Yes.
Well, not so soon, but soon, to out. And also there's a lot of, for example, the guys from the laboratorio, the laboratorio of for rehabilitation, wants to talk to you, wants to make something with you and with Epic, and of people here, also, for example, the game developers, etc. So we are really the next year you have also some free time, because that's another problem,
Sure.
We understand that it's very difficult to find the time to come, but yeah,
I'll make time for you.
Yeah, thanks. Close it en Spanish, sorry. Chicos, pues aquí está la doctora Celia. Esto fue todo lo que vamos a streamear por hoy. Si tienen dudas, la contactan por Twitter, @Celia, así como suena, sin nada intermedio, sin nada raro. La posibilidad de que el próximo año venga, todo es cuestión de coordinar, ya saben, calendarios, de coordinar actividades, sino de todas maneras pueden consultarnos con nosotros y podemos nosotros hablar con ella, por ejemplo, o más grande, porque también yo lo sé, chavos de estudios, que ustedes le querían enseñar videos y que son videos que pues no podemos mandar directamente. Entonces cualquier cosa, pónganse en contacto con nosotros y ya vemos un poco la coordinación. Hay muchas actividades que vamos a anunciar en este Devour, que no son en Ciudad de México, van a seguir realizando, entonces síganos atentos. Something that you want to say to the guys?
Muchos besos a todos y muchas gracias y hasta luego.
See you on the next streaming. Goodbye.
Here.